Hello, I'm Mary Martin, back to read Chapter 3 of my novel Night Crossing, the third in the Trilogy of Remembrance. If you've read or heard Chapter 1, you've already met Alexander Wainwright, Britain's finest landscape painter and visionary artist. You've met him in his studio, and you've stood right beside him as he gaped in awe at the stunningly beautiful cosmic egg rising up before him. In Chapter 2, you've met the narrator of the trilogy. As Alexander's art dealer, he is primarily a man of commerce and rationality, ready to lead you through the dark and murky places of Alexander's journey. And now we begin Chapter 3. Chapter 3. Let me begin with our lunch at the Savoy, where I first heard of Alec's latest vision. When I called him that morning, he said, "Jamie, I don't really have time for lunch today." He sounded almost breathless. I think I've had a breakthrough." "Surely you can take an hour, Alex. I have something very special to show you in the Jonathan Pride estate." Alex groaned. "Does it have to be today? You know how upsetting that whole business is." "It's a very intriguing piece in the collection." Alex was silent, and so I pressed on. "I've taken a photograph of a painting which I know you will want to see." The inventory in the Pride private collection would make the British Museum or the National Gallery simply drool. He sighed, but there was a faint note of interest in his voice. "All right, where shall we meet?" "The Savoy," I said grandly. "This painting alone justifies the extravagance." I knew I had him hooked. I had copied out the inscription on the back of the original painting, which read, "To Henri Dumont, Parisian pianist and fine composer. May you step from the shadows and into the sunlight you so richly deserve." However, there was no signature by the artist. I'd hoped that Alex might have some ideas. Savoy Court is a very short street leading up to a very grand hotel. Today it was clogged with cabs and scores of people chattering and jockeying about. As I approached, the doorman gave a cheery smile and tipped his top hat. Through the revolving doors I was swept into another gleaming world of black and white marble tile, rich oak paneling and elegant furnishings. A superb combination, Edwardian style mixed with touches of Art Deco. Despite the large groups of people in the lobby, sound seemed softened, and so it was delightfully quiet. Alexander was seated at a table in the Thames foyer, next to the glass and wrought iron gazebo, which housed a grand piano. A blonde-haired woman in a sleeveless dress played the piano. Soft melodies of Brahms cascaded from the keyboard and filled the room. As I approached, Alex pulled on his goatee as if ruminating over a deeply perplexing problem. Standing before him, I said, "Alex, you look lost in a fog. What are you thinking about?" As if startled from sleep, he jerked his head upward. He had the dreamy, bleary look I knew so well. Usually it meant that he had experienced some kind of revelation. "You look like you haven't slept for nights." He motioned me to sit down. The waiter handed me a menu and spread the napkin in my lap. "Listen, Alex, I've made an exciting discovery." Alex pulled on his goatee again. I'm always concerned when he grows a beard or mustache. With him, it heralds a period of withdrawal, as if he wants to hide some part of himself, for reasons unknown to me. We each ordered a sherry and settled back to examine the menu. When the waiter returned, I ordered the chicken pot pie and salad. Alex had to be roused from his reverie to order smoked salmon and scrambled eggs. Alex nodded at the envelope on the table. "So what have you there?" I took the photograph out and held it up for him. "This is the painting." I looked up at my friend. My God, Alex, what is it? All color had drained from his face, which was twisted in a strange expression of something akin to terror or awe. His breathing was sharp and shallow. I stared at him as he took the photograph. What is it? I asked. Do you know this work? He gave me no answer, but continued to gaze open-mouthed at it. His hands shook when, reverentially, he held up the photograph as if it were at last touching the Holy Grail. Alex, please, what is it? At first my friend groaned. Then he threw back his head and gave a delighted laugh. When he finally focused on me again, I could see his tears were ready to spill down his cheeks. He took his napkin and dabbed his eyes. He returned to the photograph. In a hoarse whisper, he said, Dear God, Jamie, it's incredible, absolutely unbelievable. I sat open-mouthed. The waiter set our meals in front of us. Alex said, I've seen this very egg before, with its jewels encrusted on gold. He laughed again and nearly jumped from his chair. The waiter gave us an inquiring look from the servery. We both ignored him. Alex's excitement was puzzling. So you've seen this painting before? No, no, Jamie. I saw it in my studio last night. The very egg which some person has painted. Pardon? What do you mean? He shook his head and looked at me as if I were rather slow. No, you know, Jamie, sometimes I see things. His voice trailed off. Oh, I see. Alexander experiences visions. He is one of those very creative people whose mind and spirit work in a unique and very special way. You mean you've had a vision? Alex motioned me in hopes I would keep my voice to a whisper. You saw something like this? Alex broke into a grin and shook his head violently. No, trembling with excitement, he said, I saw that very egg from my kitchen rising up in midair just in front of my workbench. I looked at the photograph again. What sort of egg is it? It's the cosmic egg. Actually, I've seen it twice. Once last night and once a few years ago when I was painting the River of Remembrance. With that painting, Alex had achieved his goal of making his divine light shine through the human form, 12 figures for that matter. He raced on. It, too, was incredibly beautiful, almost more than I can find words for. His voice trailed off, and then he said, The first time I was looking down upon it like in a dream, and it began to float up, slowly, right past me, to the ceiling where it disappeared. It was covered in gold, and the most beautiful gems, rubies, emeralds, diamonds, were all glittering. And then it came back last night, even more beautiful than the first time. What happened last night? It disappeared. Quickly, both times. His eyes took on a far-away look as he said softly, My poor brain can't comprehend how this happens. I only know that it does and that it fills me with sublime pleasure. He grinned sheepishly and said, It's like being stabbed through the heart, but tenderly. Arrested, you can't breathe. You keep looking and you can't tear yourself away. With Alex, there are times when you are absolutely stunned with his work and the thoughts behind them. You yearn to experience the world the way he does. We both began to eat lunch, as it had been growing cold. When he finished, Alex set down his knife and fork. But don't you see, Jamie? This is a truly spectacular event. I'm sure, but exactly what meaning do you take from it? Eyes filled with excitement, he hunched forward. Whenever I've envisioned this cosmic egg, it preceded a breakthrough in my art. But this time, it's different. The very next day, I see this painting of exactly the same cosmic egg. Yes? It means two things. That someone else has been what I've seen. It's not just a product of my imagination, and well, some might call it coincidence, but I would call it a very significant, meaningful event occurring. I knew that Alex was a great believer in synchronicity. Now that's not fair. He has experienced such coincidences many times before, and has always taken them seriously as signs of powers in the universe operating outside time and space, somewhere here beyond causality, and then he must pay the greatest attention to them. Drumming his fingers on the table, Alexander asked, "Who's the artist?" "That's the trouble, Alec. I don't know. It isn't signed, but there's an inscription." I withdrew another paper where I had written the artist's words. It read, "To Henri Dumont, Parisian pianist and fine composer. May you step from the shadows and into the sunlight you so richly deserve." Alex frowned deeply, but remained silent as the waiter cleared the table and I ordered coffee for us. Suddenly he slapped the table. "Then I must go to Paris and find this Henri Dumont." "That shouldn't be so hard, should it?" I shrugged. "You should take a look at the original, Alec, and see if you can glean anything more from it." This time he rapped on the table sharply and said, "Done, my friend. I'll drop in tonight." As I paid the bill, Alec tapped his foot as if we were off to the races. "What were you working on last night when you had the vision?" I asked. "That's just it, Jamie. It appeared right before the breakthrough came. It was splendid." "What sort of breakthrough did you have?" I asked carefully. "Alex has gone off on tangents with his work before and found his share of dead ends." Alex gave a short laugh. "I can see from your expression, my friend, that you will be displeased if I depart from my usual landscapes." "Oh no, Alec. I know you have to set new challenges for yourself. Every artist must." Clearly my tone was not sufficiently convincing. Leaning across the table, he said hoarsely, "I must move on from my fields, streams, and clouds. If I don't, I'm dead as a creative artist." "Of course," I said soothingly. "What have you come up with?" "Interior landscapes." "Pardon?" "Abstract art expressive of my very soul." He gave me a wink and stood up, ready to leave. As we left the restaurant, the maitre d' approached us. "Mr. Wainwright?" "Yes." "The front desk has left an envelope for you." "For me? But how do they know I'm here?" "I don't know, sir, but this is your name on it, isn't it?" He held out the envelope. Alec took it and sat down on a nearby chair. When he opened it, he frowned deeply, and then a look of absolute confusion passed over his face. He held the letter up to me. "This makes no sense whatsoever, Jamie." It was a very brief communication from a company called Channel Hopper, which booked passages on ferries crossing the English Channel. It read, "Dear Mr. Wainwright, we are pleased to confirm the booking of your first-class cabin 1B on the Iliad on October 24th, 2010, leaving Portsmouth at 5 p.m. and arriving in Cannes at 8 a.m. Alex stared into space with a look of consternation on his face. "How can this be? I never booked a ferry berth." Looking at the letter again, I smiled. "Here's your answer. It's addressed to an Arthur G. Wainwright, not you." Not comprehending yet, he continued to stare up at me. But how?" Then a hint of smile appeared. "Ah, yes, perhaps that's it." He stood up. "Just a minute, Jamie. I'll return this to the front desk." True to form, Alex seemed to draw some great significance from the mistaken delivery of the letter. That is, he is alive to signs, and most likely saw that as his explanation. "How odd," Alec muttered. "What?" "Do you see that elderly lady seated over near the elevators? The one with the ridiculous hat?" "Yes, you can't make out her face." "So, what about her?" I would have sworn she smiled and nodded at me. "You handsome devil," I laughed. "Always attracting the ladies." Alec chuckled and shook his head. "That's not what I meant. I just wondered if I knew her from somewhere. She looks familiar." I shrugged. "If she knew you, she'd probably have come over here by now and invited you for tea." Alex laughed. "I suppose." But as we walked to the lobby, he stopped several times and, frowning, glanced over his shoulder. "Oh well, she seems to have disappeared. I wonder where she went." In the foyer we shook hands. "Come around tonight," I said. "I'll show you the original." Excellent. He grinned at me. Can't wait to see it. Then he became more serious. If we can't find the artist, I'm still going to Paris to find this Henri Dumont. He set off across the lobby, but then stopped abruptly at a potted palm. Snapping his fingers, he turned on his heel and headed back to me. Do you think Daphne might like to come? To Paris? Why not? With Alec, I found it wise to refrain from expressing opinions on personal matters too enthusiastically one way or the other. He grasped my forearm. Of course, I'll ask her the next time I see her. Looking rather absent-minded, he suddenly smiled and said, I'll see you around 7. He started off, but stopped yet again and slapped his forehead. Looking crestfallen, he said, Damn, I'm getting forgetful. I didn't call Daphne back. He glanced at his watch. I should have hours ago. He grimaced and headed out the revolving doors. I shook my head. Alex gave the impression he was only really here with us part of the time. With his mind floating about in other realms, I was scarcely surprised he forgot such mundane matters as returning telephone calls.